I never imagined that mowing lawns would lead me anywhere beyond a pocket of summer wages and the ache of a sore back. At 21, I was just a college student looking for extra money, pushing a mower across stretches of neat grass for neighbors who hardly remembered my name. Most of my clients were retirees or families too busy to manage their yards. But then there was Michael. The first time I saw him, I almost mistook him for one of those polished professionals you'd find on a billboard. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that seemed to fill the doorway, he carried himself with an ease that made me straighten unconsciously. His handshake was firm, his smile warm, but his eyes lingered longer than necessary, as though he was reading something in me I hadn't yet admitted to myself. "This place gets wild in summer," he said, motioning to the yard that stretched wide around his suburban house. "You'll probably be here once a week, if you're up for it." I agreed quickly, partly because the pay was fair, but mostly because of the way he spoke. Casual, friendly, but layered with something I couldn't name. Over his shoulder, I caught a glimpse of Clara, his wife. She waved politely, her hair tied back, her expression kind but distant, as if she had a dozen things on her mind besides the boy pushing a mower across her lawn. From that day, a rhythm formed. Every Saturday morning I would roll my mower up to the gate, and Michael would already be outside, coffee in hand. He had a habit of finding reasons to linger. Sometimes he'd bring me a bottle of cold water. Other times he'd lean against the porch railing and ask about my classes, my plans, even whether I was seeing anyone special. It was the sort of question clients didn't usually ask, and though his tone was light, his gaze was sharp, waiting for an answer that I told him no. The word seemed to please him more than it should have. The yard was large enough to keep me occupied for hours, yet I was always aware of Michael's presence. If I looked up from the mower, I'd find him watching. Not in an obvious way, but in those small, unmistakable glances. I tried to shake it off, but each week, the attention dug deeper under my skin. One afternoon, I passed by the open window of his study. His voice drifted out, low and tender, speaking on the phone. I assumed it was Clara until he noticed me near the hedge. The warmth vanished from his face, replaced by something guarded, as if I had stepped too close to a boundary I didn't yet understand. That moment unsettled me. Yet it also ignited a curiosity I couldn't quiet. I had always carried questions about myself, quiet thoughts, flickers of attraction I buried under routine. Michael's presence forced those thoughts into the light, and I didn't know whether to resist or lean into them. By the third week, our conversations felt less like small talk and more like a ritual. He asked about my childhood, my friends, even the professors I admired. He laughed easily, complimented me often, and made me feel as though my answers mattered. With other clients, I was invisible. With him, I felt seen. Still, Clara's presence lingered at the edges. I would glimpse her leaving for errands, or hear her voice call from inside the house. She was never unkind, but she seemed to exist in a separate orbit, one I wasn't invited to cross. I couldn't tell if that was Michael's doing or hers. Then came the evening that shifted everything. I had finished trimming the last corner of the yard, the sun sliding low and staining the sky orange. Clara, he told me, was away visiting her sister. Michael walked out with 2 glasses of water, though he didn't hand me mine right away. Instead, he studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You've worked hard," he said softly. "Why don't you come inside for a drink before you go?" I froze. I had never stepped foot in his home. The house loomed behind him, immaculate and inviting, yet filled with implications I couldn't ignore. Part of me wanted to decline, to keep our arrangement simple and professional. But another part, the part that had noticed every lingering glance and felt every unspoken word, was drawn toward that door. Michael's voice cut through my hesitation. "Just one drink. Nothing more." And so I followed him inside, knowing as my shoes crossed the threshold that something invisible had shifted, something that could not be undone. Stepping into Michael's home felt like trespassing, though he was the one holding the door open. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something floral, Clara's presence, I assumed, yet the silence belonged to him. He guided me toward the living room, a space both elegant and personal. Family photographs lined the mantel, Clara's handwriting labeled a calendar pinned neatly to the wall, and yet Michael's energy eclipsed all of it. "Sit," he said, motioning to the couch. His tone was calm, but there was a weight to it, a quiet insistence that I lowered myself onto the cushions, trying to appear relaxed though my chest hammered with unease. He returned with 2 glasses of wine instead of water, setting one in front of me. The gesture was small, but deliberate. I understood then that this wasn't about refreshment, it was about invitation. That he sat beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched. His frame filled the space, his posture relaxed, but his eyes never wavered. "You work harder than most men twice your age," Michael remarked, lifting his glass. "That kind of dedication says something about you." I tried to laugh it off, but my throat tightened. Compliments from him carried a different charge. They weren't casual, they pressed against places inside me I'd tried to keep hidden. The conversation unfolded with surprising ease. He asked about my classes, my parents, what I wanted after graduation. When I told him I wasn't sure yet, he nodded knowingly, as though he recognized that uncertainty in himself. "You've got time," he said. "But don't waste it living by other people's expectations. Life's too short for that." The words struck deeper than they should have. Was he speaking to me, or to himself? Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't empty. It was thick, humming with unspoken thought. His hand rested on his knee, inches from mine, steady but poised as though testing the boundary. My pulse thudded in my ears, then he leaned back, exhaling, his voice lower. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I feel invisible in my own house." I turned to look at him, startled by the vulnerability in his tone. His gaze was fixed forward, on nothing in particular, as if confessing to the walls rather than to me. "Clara is wonderful, don't mistake me. But after years, you start to wonder if the person beside you really sees you anymore." I didn't know what to say. His honesty disarmed me, left me unmoored. I wasn't his confidant, and yet he offered me a piece of himself he claimed no one else noticed. When he finally looked at me, the intensity in his eyes made my breath falter. Slowly, deliberately, he let his hand brush against mine. Not a full gesture, not yet, just a test, a signal that I didn't pull away. The touch lingered, electricity coursing through that small point of contact. My mind screamed about consequences, about lines I should never cross, but my body betrayed me. The forbidden nature of it, the intimacy hidden in plain sight, held me still. Michael shifted closer. His shoulder grazed mine. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Tell me to stop, and I will." But I didn't. I couldn't. The next moment unfolded like a rush of air escaping a sealed room. He leaned in, tentative yet sure, and his lips brushed mine. The kiss was soft, fleeting at first, but it carried with it the weight of restraint breaking. I tasted wine and the edge of something unspoken, something reckless. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine, desperate for permission. I didn't speak, but the silence was answer enough. We kissed again, slower this time, longer. Every nerve in my body awakened, caught between guilt and hunger. My mind registered the photographs on the mantel, Clara's smiling face frozen in time, yet my body leaned deeper into him. The spell was broken only by the shrill sound of a phone vibrating on the coffee table. Michael froze, staring at the screen where Clara's name glowed. For a suspended moment, I thought he might answer. Instead, he let it ring until the sound faded into silence. That he turned back to me, his jaw tense but his eyes unwavering. That was the moment I realized inwardly, we weren't just crossing a line, we had already stepped far beyond it. The week after that night, I returned to Michael's house with my mower, uncertain if the world outside would look the same. The grass still grew wild along the fence line, the sun still beat down with the same summer heat, yet I felt changed. I had crossed into a territory I couldn't retreat from, and every step onto his property reminded me of it. Michael greeted me as though nothing unusual had happened. His smile was practiced, casual, the kind a neighbor might give, but behind it lay a current only I could recognize. His eyes caught mine for a fraction too long, his voice dipped when he asked how my week had been. The performance was flawless, yet the subtext was undeniable. Clara was there this time, her presence like a tether pulling us both back into reality. She stepped onto the porch with a basket of folded laundry, thanking me politely for keeping the yard neat. Her voice was light, warm even, but every word carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Standing in front of her, I felt complicit in a secret she hadn't been given the chance to suspect. When she retreated inside, Michael approached me under the pretense of discussing the hedge. His arm brushed against mine as he leaned in, his words ordinary, "You might need to trim it lower next week," but the way he said them was anything but. The smallest contact felt deliberate, dangerous, almost thrilling. I realized then how easily desire could disguise itself as routine. That afternoon stretched long, each moment thick with the awareness of what we had shared. At one point, Michael passed me a bottle of water, his fingers grazing mine. It was nothing, a blink's worth of touch, but it left my pulse unsteady. I began to wonder if he felt the same dissonance I did, half guilty, half craving more. Later, while I packed up my tools, he found me again, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he said quietly, "I meant what I told you. I don't know how long I can keep pretending everything's fine." His words carried a weight that unsettled me. This wasn't just temptation anymore, it was the beginning of something more complicated, something messy that I should have told him to stop, to protect his life, his marriage, even my own conscience. But I didn't. The truth was, I had begun to crave his attention. Each look, each touch, each word was a spark, and the thought of losing it left me hollow. One evening, as the sky darkened, temptation nearly caught us both. Clara returned home earlier than expected while I was still in the driveway, loading my mower into the truck. The slam of a car door startled me, and suddenly there she was, waving cheerfully. My hands shook as I lifted the handle of the mower, my mind flashing through images of her photographs inside the house, her smile framed against Michael's arm. Michael's reaction was subtle, but I noticed it, the stiffening of his shoulders, the careful distance he kept from me until she disappeared inside. That moment cemented the fragility of what we were doing. We weren't living in a storybook, we were balancing on a fault line, and the ground could give way at any moment. After that, every interaction became sharper. A lingering glance when Clara wasn't looking. A quick brush of his hand against mine as he passed me tools. Whispers exchanged under the cover of ordinary conversation. It was a hidden language only the two of us spoke, dangerous and intoxicating. At night, I would lie awake replaying it all. The kiss, the phone call he ignored, the way his voice lowered when he spoke only to me. I knew it was wrong, but the thought of walking away felt impossible. Michael had become more than an employer, he was a gravity I couldn't escape. The summer stretched on, each week pulling me deeper into the secret we had built together. I told myself I could stop whenever I wanted, that it was just a passing experience, a fleeting thrill. But deep down, I knew better. I knew I would remember this summer not for the money I earned or the lawns I cut, but for the dangerous intimacy that had rewritten the way I saw myself, and him. As I left his house one evening, the last rays of sunlight spilling across the yard, I glanced back. Michael stood at the window, watching me, his face half-shadowed, half-lit. That image etched itself into me, a man torn between the life he had built and the life he secretly craved. I drove away with the mower rattling in the back, my chest heavy with the knowledge that we had stepped into a story without a clear ending. Whether it would collapse under its own secrecy or linger like an ember long after summer faded, I couldn't yet tell, but one truth was certain, I had been hired to mow his lawn, and I had left with far more than I ever expected.